The train hissed like a tired animal as it slowed to a stop, iron wheels screaming against the tracks. Dust swirled through the small frontier station, clinging to skirts, boots, and broken dreams. Clara Whitmore stood alone on the wooden platform, her fingers clenched around the worn leather handle of a single suitcase. She had imagined this moment 100 times during the long journey west, but none of those imaginings had prepared her for the silence. No eager groom, no welcoming smile, no sign bearing her name, just the wind, the dust, and the quiet humiliation of being forgotten. She adjusted her simple blue dress, the one she had sewn herself back in Ohio, and lifted her chin as if dignity alone could shield her from the stares of strangers. Clara was a mail-order bride, sent west on the promise of a new life with a man named Thomas Hale. His letters had been polite, hopeful, and full of plans. A small house, children, a fresh start. She had clung to those words like a lifeline after her parents' deaths left her, with nothing but debt and grief. Now, standing on that platform, the letters felt like lies written in someone else's hand. The station master cleared his throat. "Miss, you sure someone's coming for you?" Clara forced a smile. "I'm sure," she lied softly. But as the sun dipped lower and the shadows stretched long across the platform, reality settled heavy in her chest. Thomas Hale was not coming. Whether he was dead, married, or simply cruel enough to abandon her, she did not know. What she did know was that she had spent her last coin on this journey. There was no train ticket back, no family to return to. The West had swallowed her whole, and it hadn't even bothered to chew. That night, Clara found herself walking along a dirt road just beyond the town, guided only by moonlight and stubborn resolve. She had heard the boarding house was full. The church locked its doors at sundown. Pride had kept her from begging. Fear kept her moving. And then she saw him. He lay just off the road, half hidden by tall grass, a dark shape against the pale earth. At first, she thought he was dead. Then she heard the faint groan, low, pained, unmistakably human. Clara froze. Every sensible instinct told her to turn back. The West was dangerous, especially for a woman alone. But compassion, that old familiar ache in her chest, won out. She knelt beside him, her breath catching. He was a cowboy, that much was clear. Broad shoulders. Dust-stained hat fallen nearby. His shirt was soaked dark with blood along his side. His face, though rugged and weathered, held a quiet strength even in unconsciousness. He couldn't have been much older than 30. A fresh gash ran along his ribs, likely from a fall or a fight. Infection would kill him if he was left here. "Sir," she whispered, gently shaking his shoulder. "Can you hear me?" His eyes fluttered open, sharp gray beneath heavy lashes. And for a moment Clara felt as though she were being studied, even in his weakness. His lips parted, but only a rasp came out. Then his eyes closed again. That was enough. Clara didn't think. She acted, with more strength than she thought she possessed. She dragged him toward a small abandoned line shack she'd noticed earlier, used once by ranch hands and long since forgotten. It took nearly an hour, her arms screaming in protest, her dress torn and filthy by the time she got him inside. But she did it. She laid him on the narrow cot, cleaned the wound with water from a cracked basin, and tore strips from her petticoat to bandage him. All night she stayed awake, tending the fire, cooling his fevered skin, whispering reassurances he might not even hear. She told him her name. She told him she had nowhere else to go. She told him in a trembling voice that she understood what it meant to be left behind. By morning, the cowboy still lived. When he woke again, the fever had broken. He looked at her as if trying to place her in a world that no longer made sense. "You didn't leave," he murmured. "No," Clara said softly. "I know what it feels like when people don't come back." He swallowed, pain flickering across his face. "Name's Jacob," he said after a pause. "Jacob Cole." She nodded. "I'm Clara." Neither of them knew it yet. But this moment, a forgotten bride and a wounded cowboy in a broken shack, would change both their lives forever. Clara had no idea that the man she had just saved was the owner of the largest ranch in 3 counties, and Jacob Cole had no idea that the quiet woman tending his wounds would soon become the only home he'd ever truly known. And if you're already feeling the pull of this story, the mystery, the heartbreak, the promise of what's to come, make sure you subscribe to the channel now, because the next chapter will reveal a secret that turns Clara's world upside down, and nothing will ever be the same again. When you're ready, just reply, "Next chapter." Chapter 2 dives deeper. Secrets, suspicion, and a bond neither of them planned. Morning crept quietly into the line shack, pale light slipping through the cracks in the wooden walls and settling gently over Clara's exhausted face. She had not slept. Every creak of the cot, every uneven breath from Jacob kept her alert, her heart poised between hope and fear. When she finally noticed his eyes open, clearer now, more focused, she felt something loosen inside her chest, as though she had been holding her breath all night without realizing it. Jacob Cole watched her carefully, not with suspicion but with a quiet curiosity, as if she were a puzzle he hadn't expected to find. "You stayed," he said again, voice stronger than before, though still rough around the edges. Clara nodded, embarrassed by the sudden warmth in her cheeks. "You were hurt. I couldn't just leave you there." Jacob shifted slightly, then winced, his jaw tightening as pain flared through his side. Clara was at his side instantly, pressing her hand lightly against his shoulder. The contact startled them both. His skin was warm, solid, grounding. For a brief second, neither moved. "Easy," she said softly. "The wound's deep. You're lucky you didn't bleed out." "Luck hasn't been much of a friend to me lately," Jacob replied, forcing a faint smile. Clara busied herself with the kettle, grateful for the distraction. She poured him water, helped him drink, and checked the bandage. It had soaked through in the night, but the bleeding had slowed. She cleaned it again, hands steady despite the closeness, despite the awareness she felt with every breath he took. She wondered who he was beyond the pain and dust. A hired hand, most likely. A drifter. A man accustomed to being alone. Jacob watched her movements, the careful way she worked, the quiet confidence beneath her gentleness. "You're not from around here," he said. "No," Clara answered. "That much is obvious, isn't it?" He chuckled, then winced again. "You talk like the East." She hesitated, then nodded. "Ohio." Jacob raised his eyebrows slightly. "That's a long way to wander." "I didn't wander," she said, the words slipping out before she could stop them. "I came for someone." He caught the shift in her tone. "Someone didn't show?" Clara swallowed. She had not planned to tell him. But something about the way he asked, quiet, without judgment, made the truth easier to release. "I was supposed to be married. A mail-order bride." Jacob's expression darkened, not with pity, but with something closer to anger. "And he left you?" "Yes." He looked away, jaw tight. "That's a special kind of cruelty." Clara shrugged, though the sting still burned. "Cruelty seems common out here." "Not everywhere," Jacob said firmly. "And not from everyone." For a moment, silence stretched between them, heavy with unspoken understanding. Two strangers, both wounded in different ways, sharing a fragile peace in a forgotten shack. Outside, the wind swept across the plains, carrying the scent of dust and dry grass, the sound of distant cattle lowing somewhere far beyond the hills. Jacob tried to sit up again, stubbornness flaring despite the pain. Clara gently but firmly pressed him back down. "You're not going anywhere today." He sighed, defeated. "Suppose I don't have much choice." "You don't," she said, then added with a small smile. "But you're welcome to stay, at least until you're healed." Jacob studied her face, as if weighing something important. "You don't even know me." "I know you were hurt," Clara replied. "And I know you didn't deserve to be left there." Something shifted in his gaze then, a flicker of something deeper. Gratitude, perhaps, or guilt. As the day passed, Clara ventured into town for supplies, leaving Jacob resting. She returned with bread, dried meat, and a small bottle of medicine purchased with the last of her money. She told herself it was temporary, that she was helping him heal, nothing more. But even as she thought it, she felt the fragile beginning of something she hadn't dared hope for since stepping onto that train platform. Jacob, for his part, kept his past tightly guarded. When Clara asked about his work, he simply said he did odd jobs. When she asked where he lived, he gestured vaguely toward the horizon. He spoke little of himself, but he listened when she talked. About Ohio, about her parents, about the letters she had believed in. And when she spoke, he never interrupted, never dismissed her pain. He treated her story as something sacred. That night, as the fire crackled low, Jacob finally spoke again. "I don't plan to stay long." Clara nodded, though her heart sank. "I wouldn't expect you to. But," he continued, "I won't forget this. What you did. Most folks would have walked right past me." She met his eyes across the firelight. "Most folks don't know what it feels like to be invisible." Jacob didn't respond, but the truth of her words settled deep in his chest. Outside the shack, unseen by Clara, riders searched the darkened plains. Men loyal to the coal ranch, calling their owner's name into the night, unaware that the man they sought was lying low, wounded, and hiding the truth from the woman who had saved his life. Jacob Cole had chosen silence for a reason. If Clara knew who he really was, the wealth, the power, the land, she might look at him differently. And after a lifetime of being valued for what he owned rather than who he was, he wasn't ready to risk that again. For now, he was just a wounded cowboy. And Clara, the forgotten bride, was the only person in the world who truly saw him. And if this quiet bond, this growing trust, is pulling you deeper into the story, don't forget to subscribe to the channel. The next chapter brings danger to their doorstep, and a truth that can't stay buried much longer. When you're ready, say next chapter. Chapter 3 raises the stakes, jealousy, pursuit, and a secret that almost comes to light. The third night brought a storm, sudden and fierce, rolling across the plains. With a low thunder that rattled the walls of the line shack, rain lashed the roof like thrown gravel, and the wind howled as if warning anyone foolish enough to be caught outside. Clara sat close to the fire, mending a tear in Jacob's shirt, while he rested on the cot, stronger now, though still pale from blood loss. The storm pressed them into a strange intimacy. The world beyond the shack erased, leaving only firelight, rain, and two hearts learning the rhythm of each other's presence. Jacob watched Clara's hands as she sewed, nimble and careful. "You ever regret coming out here?" he asked quietly. Her needle paused mid-stitch. "Every day," she admitted. Then, after a breath, "And yet—" "Not entirely." He lifted an eyebrow. "That sounds like a contradiction." "So does life," she said, meeting his gaze. "If I hadn't come, I wouldn't be here. I wouldn't have met you." Something unspoken passed between them, warm and dangerous. Jacob looked away first, his chest tightening. He had not planned on caring, had not planned on feeling this pull toward a woman whose kindness felt like sunlight after years of dust and shadow. The storm outside mirrored the one building inside him, the fear that if she knew the truth, she would leave like everyone else eventually did. The next morning dawned clear and sharp, the storm having washed the land clean. Clara stepped outside to gather firewood and froze. Fresh hoofprints marked the wet ground, leading dangerously close to the shack. Her heart leapt into her throat. Someone had been nearby, watching. When she hurried inside and told Jacob, his expression hardened instantly. Gone was the weary cowboy she had nursed. In his place stood a man alert, commanding and unmistakably dangerous. "How many?" he asked. I don't know," Clara said. "2, maybe 3 horses." Jacob cursed under his breath. He pushed himself to stand, ignoring the protest of his wound. "They're looking for me." The words hung heavy in the air. "Who?" Clara asked. Jacob hesitated. Men who won't ask questions before they pull a trigger. Fear curled in her stomach. "Jacob, what kind of trouble are you in?" "The kind that doesn't forgive," he said. "You shouldn't be here." Her chin lifted. "I'm already here." Before he could argue, voices drifted through the open land, distant but unmistakable. Men calling out, searching. Clara's pulse pounded as Jacob moved with grim determination, retrieving a revolver hidden beneath the cot. She stared at it, realization crashing over her. This wasn't some hired hand running from a bar fight. This was something far bigger. "They won't hurt you," Jacob said, his voice low and steady. "But if they find me here, they'll drag you into it." "I won't leave you," Clara said without thinking. He turned to her sharply. "Don't say that." "Why?" she challenged, fear giving way to something fiercer. "Because you don't think I can choose?" Jacob closed his eyes briefly. He had spent his life making choices alone, carrying burdens in silence. And now here was this woman, abandoned, forgotten, standing her ground without hesitation. It terrified him more than the men outside ever could. The voices faded eventually, the riders moving on, fooled by the storm-washed tracks. But the danger lingered like smoke. That night tension lay thick between them. Clara demanded answers. Jacob gave only fragments. He spoke of enemies, of land disputes, of men who wanted what wasn't theirs. "You talk like someone who owns something worth taking," she said slowly. Jacob's jaw tightened. "I do." Clara searched his face. "You're not just a cowboy, are you?" The fire popped loudly, breaking the silence. Jacob met her gaze, his eyes heavy with something like regret. "Does it matter?" "It matters if you're lying to me. I'm protecting you." "By keeping me in the dark?" He stepped closer, close enough that she could feel his breath. "Because if you know who I am, you might not look at me the same." Her voice softened. "Try me." But Jacob turned away. Not yet. That night, Clara lay awake, questions gnawing at her. She thought of the way he carried himself, the way men seemed to fear him, the way danger followed him like a shadow. And yet, when she had been alone and afraid, he had never once treated her as weak or disposable. At dawn, a stranger arrived. A well-dressed man on a fine horse rode up to the shack, his boots polished, his posture rigid. He dismounted and called out, his eyes sharp and searching. "Jacob Cole!" Clara's breath caught. Jacob went still. The man stepped closer. "You've got half the county looking for you. The ranch is in chaos." Clara turned slowly toward Jacob, her world tilting. "The ranch?" The man noticed her then, surprise flickering across his face. "And who might you be, miss?" Jacob's silence was answer enough. "The Cole Ranch," Clara whispered. "The largest ranch in the territory?" Jacob finally spoke, his voice rough. "I wanted you to know me first. Not the land, not the name." Clara stared at him, betrayal and wonder crashing together inside her chest. The wounded cowboy she had saved wasn't just a man in trouble. He was the most powerful ranch owner for miles, and he had chosen to hide it from her. Before she could respond, more riders appeared on the horizon. Jacob reached for her hand. "Whatever you're feeling, you need to decide fast, because once they reach us, nothing will be the same." And as Clara stood there, caught between the past she had lost and a future she never imagined, one truth became painfully clear. Being forgotten had saved her life. But loving Jacob Cole might cost her everything. If this revelation just hit you as hard as it hit Clara, don't forget to subscribe to the channel. The next chapter brings heartbreak, separation, and a choice that will test love against pride. Say next chapter when you're ready. Chapter 4 changes everything. The riders arrived in a cloud of dust and authority, their horses restless, their eyes sharp with concern and relief. Clara stepped back instinctively as they surrounded the shack, men tipping their hats toward Jacob with a mixture of respect and urgency. It was unmistakable now. This was no ordinary cowboy standing beside her. This was a man accustomed to being obeyed, a man whose name carried weight. And the realization struck Clara like a physical blow. "Mr. Cole," the well-dressed man said, exhaling as though he'd been holding his breath for days. "Thank God we found you. We feared the worst." Jacob nodded stiffly. "I'm alive. That's all that matters." "It matters a great deal more than that," the man replied. "The ranch is vulnerable. Rivals are circling. Without you—" "That's enough," Jacob cut in, his voice firm. Clara watched the exchange in silence, her heart pounding. Every word confirmed what she already feared. He had a world, power, land, security, and yet he had let her believe he was as lost as she was. She felt suddenly small, foolish for thinking the bond they'd formed existed on equal ground. Jacob turned to her, his expression unreadable. "Clara, She stepped away before he could finish. "So all this time," she said quietly, "you were pretending." "I was hiding," he corrected. "There's a difference." "To me there isn't," she replied, her voice trembling despite her effort to stay composed. "You let me think you had nothing. You let me open my life to you while you kept yours locked away." Jacob took a step closer, but she raised her hand, stopping him. "Don't," she said. "Please don't." The men shifted uncomfortably, sensing they were intruding on something deeply personal. Jacob dismissed them with a sharp look. "Give us a moment." Reluctantly, they pulled back, waiting at a distance. Jacob faced Clara again, pain etched across his face. "I never meant to deceive you. I just wanted once to be seen without my name attached, without my land-buying loyalty." "And what about my choice?" Clara asked. "Did you think I didn't deserve the truth?" He exhaled heavily. "I was afraid if you knew, you'd stay for the wrong reasons." Tears burned her eyes. "And now I don't know if anything between us was real." That hurt him more than any wound. "Every moment was real," he said fiercely. "Every word, every look. I've never felt more honest than I did with you." Silence stretched between them, thick and aching. "I didn't come west for wealth," Clara said finally. "I came because I believed in the idea of building something together, and now I don't know where I fit in your world." Jacob reached into his coat and pulled out a folded piece of paper, worn and creased. "I found this in town," he said softly, holding it out. "Your name was on it. The man who was supposed to meet you, he died weeks ago. Fever." Clara's breath caught. The truth landed with a dull, hollow ache. She had been abandoned not by cruelty but by fate. Still forgotten. Still alone. Jacob continued, his voice gentle. You don't owe me anything. Not gratitude. Not forgiveness. But I want you to know, I never saw you as lesser. You saved my life. And you changed it. Clara turned away, tears finally spilling free. I need time, she whispered. I need to know who I am now without promises that never came true. Jacob nodded slowly, swallowing his own pain. Then I won't stop you. By sunset, Clara had packed her single suitcase once more. She would return to town, find work, build a life on her own terms. Jacob watched her go, the distance between them heavier than the miles stretching across the prairie. As she walked away, Clara felt something settle inside her. Not bitterness, but strength. She had survived being forgotten. She would survive this too. And Jacob Cole, standing alone with his ranch and his power, realized that for the first time in his life, everything he owned meant nothing without the woman who had seen him when he was at his weakest. If this chapter stirred your heart, don't forget to subscribe to the channel. The next chapter brings regret, resilience, and a love that refuses to stay buried. When you're ready, say next chapter. Chapter 5 begins the road back. But not without cost. Clara returned to town, with dust on her hem and resolve in her spine. The same station that had once felt like a place of quiet. Humiliation now greeted her with indifference. And somehow that made it easier. No one remembered the forgotten bride. No one whispered her failure. She was just another woman trying to make her way in the West. And for the first time, since stepping off the train weeks ago, that anonymity felt like freedom. She found work quickly. First washing dishes at the boarding house that had once turned her away, then sewing repairs for ranch hands, who needed sturdy stitches and asked few questions. Her hands were skilled, her back straight, her voice polite but firm. Clara Whitmore no longer waited for someone else to define her place. Each earned coin felt like a small victory, proof that she could survive on her own. Yet at night, when the town quieted and the oil lamp flickered low, her thoughts betrayed her. Jacob's face appeared uninvited, the way his eyes softened when he listened, the pain he tried to hide behind stubborn silence, the gratitude that had lived in his touch when she tended his wounds. She reminded herself of the truth, of the lie, of the distance between their worlds. But memory was cruel. It only held on to what mattered. Across the plains, Jacob Cole rode through his land like a ghost haunting his own life. The Cole ranch bustled again under his command. Fences mended, cattle counted, rivals kept at bay. Men respected him, feared him, deferred to him, but none of them saw the emptiness that followed him from sunrise to sunset. Power had returned easily. Peace had not. He replayed every moment in the shack over and over again. Every chance he could have told her the truth sooner. Every time he had chosen fear instead of trust. The ranch felt larger now, louder, filled with reminders of everything Clara was not part of. And for the first time, Jacob understood something that had always escaped him. Land could be reclaimed. Wounds could heal, but lost trust was far harder to win back. One evening, Jacob received word that Clara had been seen in town, working, independent, unprotected by any man's name, but her own. The news hit him harder than any threat ever had. She was surviving without him, and while pride bloomed alongside the pain, regret followed close behind. He had wanted to protect her from his world. Instead, he had pushed her out of his life entirely. Days later, fate intervened again, harsh and unforgiving. A fire broke out near the boarding house where Clara worked, sparked by a faulty lantern. Smoke filled the night, panic spreading faster than flames. Clara helped guide others to safety, her lungs burning, her heart pounding. But when part of the roof collapsed, she was trapped inside, coughing disoriented, her strength failing. Jacob arrived with his men moments later, drawn by the glow against the dark sky. He didn't think, he acted. He charged through smoke and heat, calling her name until his voice went raw. When he found her, half-conscious and slumped against a wall, relief nearly brought him to his knees. He carried her out into the cool night air, holding her as though she might vanish if he loosened his grip. Clara coughed, eyes fluttering open, meeting his gaze. For a moment, the world narrowed to just the two of them again. "You shouldn't be here," she whispered. "I should have never let you go," he replied, the words breaking free at last. Silence followed, heavy but different now. Less angry, more honest. "I don't need saving," Clara said quietly. "I know," Jacob said. "But I still want to stand beside you, and if you'll let me." as the man I am. No hiding. She studied him, searching for the truth she needed. Not wealth, not power, just sincerity. I don't know if I'm ready, she admitted. That's fair, he said. I'll wait. I just needed you to know. You mattered. You still do. As they stood beneath the starlit sky, something fragile but real took root again. Not forgiveness. Not yet, but possibility. Love hadn't disappeared. It had simply changed, tempered by fire and distance, waiting to see if both were brave enough to reach for it again. If you've stayed with this story through pain, growth, and hope, make sure you subscribe to the channel. The final chapter brings healing, truth, and a choice that will define their forever. When you're ready, say next chapter. Chapter 6. The final chapter. Delivers the payoff. The weeks following the fire passed slowly, as though time itself was waiting to see what Clara and Jacob would decide. Clara recovered fully, her strength returning along with a quiet certainty she hadn't possessed before. She continued her work in town, not because she had to, but because she wanted to. Independence had become part of her identity now, something she would never again surrender, and Jacob understood that in a way few men of his position ever would. He did not pressure her. He did not send gifts or make grand promises. Instead, he showed up, sometimes with supplies for the boarding house, sometimes simply to check on her well-being. He listened. He respected her boundaries, and slowly, without spectacle, trust began to rebuild. One afternoon, Clara accepted his invitation to visit the Cole ranch. She arrived not as a guest, to be impressed, but as a woman determined to see the truth for herself. The land was vast, stretching farther than the eye could see, cattle grazing beneath an open sky. It was impressive, yes, but what struck her most was the way the workers spoke of Jacob. Not with fear, but loyalty, not because of what he owned, but because of how he treated them. Jacob walked beside her, not ahead, not behind. This place doesn't mean much if it's empty, he said quietly. I don't want a woman who needs my name. I want one who chooses me. Clara stopped and faced him. And I don't want a man who rescues me. I want one who respects me. Jacob smiled, the weight he'd carried for years finally lifting. Then we want the same thing. That evening, as the sun dipped low and painted the plains gold, Jacob told her everything, no secrets left behind. His past, his fears, his loneliness, and Clara told him hers. 2 lives laid bare, equal at last. When Jacob asked her to stay, he did not offer wealth or comfort. He offered partnership, a home built together, a future defined not by what either of them had lost, but by what they chose next. Clara looked out across the land, then back at the man who had once bled alone in the dirt and smiled. I wasn't forgotten, she said softly. I was led here. They married quietly, without spectacle, under an open sky. Not because the ranch demanded a mistress, but because 2 people had found their way to each other honestly. Clara kept her work, her voice, her independence. Jacob gained something far greater than land, a home that breathed and lived and loved. And as the seasons changed, the Cole Ranch became known not just for its size, but for its heart. If this story moved you, if you believe love is strongest when chosen freely, don't forget to subscribe to the channel. More powerful stories are waiting for you, and the next one begins soon.